As we're approaching the season of Hanukkah, Hanukkah, which is a season of the rededication of the temple in Jerusalem, by the family of Mattathias, the Maccabees, as they were known. What do you have? Do you have any words, or do you want to expound on this season and what it means to you? Okay. And what do you see? What do you get out of this season?
I definitely have some things to say in brief about the Maccabee season and the season of Hanukkah, the Maccabee family and the season of Hanukkah. The first thing I want to say is that when we look at the word Hanukkah, the word Hanukkah is translated as dedication. And some of us even say the rededication of the Jerusalem temple, which is what the sons of Mattathias, Judah Maccabee, and his brothers essentially did. They rededicated the temple. But in modern Hebrew, the term Hanukkah also means revitalization, which is very key and very important, because not only did Yehuda Maccabee or Judah Maccabee and his brothers go and rededicate the temple, they actually revitalized the temple spiritually by restoring the temple's foundation, which was restoring law and order, which i.e. was they restored the Torah. So while remembering that the term Hanukkah means dedication, I want us to also focus on some of the nuance in the meaning that is used today, because Hanukkah, as used today, also is rooted in the concept of revitalization or rejuvenation. Hanukkah represents a season of rededication to God, revitalization of the will of God, i.e. the Torah, and spiritual rejuvenation. The season of Hanukkah begins with Mattathias, or, I don't like the Greek names, Matityahu, gift of Yah.
Right.
And what a gift of Yah this man was.
Right.
This man lived during a time, and he was what they would consider now a Rosh in the community, or a Nasi. He was a chief man, and he was a leader in the community, and he was of the tribe of Levi. Shout out to all my Levite brothers. I know my brother Uz is with me on this. So, Lewi. So, hear me out now. As a leader in the community and coming from such a fierce tribe as Levi, remember Lewi was that tribe when every tribe decided that they was going to turn around and defy God.
Talk about it, brother.
Lewi drew their swords and said, oh yeah, well we still down with God, and we ready to take those of y'all who not down up out of here.
Moses said, who's on God's side?
Who was on God's side? And I believe only the tribe of Lewi spoke up.
That's right.
Shout out to all y'all other tribes though. Y'all made up a little bit. But getting back to the topic at hand, Matityahu was an amazing gift of Yah.
Right.
Names are so powerful. Names have so much meaning. In Hebrew, when we give something a name, we are identifying with the essence of the thing we're naming.
Right.
When you look at the life of Matityahu, he was certainly a gift of Yah.
Right.
He is now living during the time of the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes, which was one of the most cruel Seleucid kings of the Grecian Empire. Right? And this man was so wild and crazy that behind his back they call him Epimanes, which literally translates in Greek as madman. Madman. Epiphanes was his title of grandeur. It meant like, someone of royal stature, someone of grand thought. Like when you see this person enter a room, you only thought noble and high thoughts of them. Epiphanies, Antiochus Epiphanes, right?
I read somewhere that it meant God manifest.
God manifests. like you literally, when you were in the room with this person, you felt like you was in the room with God, right?
Right.
Well, because he was so crazy, the people that knew him knew him. Right. In today's language, when you double something, it's real.
So and it's funny because both names are almost synonymous.
They're almost synonymous.
So you can see, you know how black people be like, so and so and so.
Yeah, you know we flipped it on so many different levels, man. Again, and that's right. The synergy. There's so much relationship in the phonetics of the name. Epiphanes and Epimanes. Epimanes is Greek for madman. And that's what they called him behind his back. And he was a madman. Right. Because even his predecessor, Alexander the Great, when he approached Jerusalem, at that point he had tore up all of the land of Israel by the sword. You know, he didn't allow a single sword to be flung or swung in all of Jerusalem. You read about it in the book of Maccabees. And you also read about it in the apocryphal works of those contemporary during that time period who attest to those things. And there's also oral traditions that are existing within those time periods that says that when Alexander the Great came into Israel, he swung his sword left, right, north, south, east, and west. But when he approached Jerusalem, he felt that there was something different about this city. And the high priest came out at that time of Jerusalem. And the high priest told to him, if you do as much as swing your sword in the air without touching man or beast, without even having touched man or beast, you will die 10 times. And Alexander, being the warlike general that he is, looked him deep in his eyes as if he wanted to take his sword out of his sheath. But in Alexander's own memoir, he says that something literally compelled him not to make that decision. And because of him not making that decision, this is some background history, every male child that was born in Jerusalem that year was called Alexander. Wow. But that's not where my name comes from. Because those who know me know that, you know, my name is Alex. That's my birth name. And my father named me after Alex Haley, the author of Roots. Okay. But then I did some research and I found that even that name is still a Greek name. It doesn't matter that Alex Haley. It's still the root. It's the root. The root is Greek. Yeah. My father was naming me after this beautiful man, the author of Roots, Alex Haley. Right. But even Alex Haley had a foreign European Greco-Roman name. Right. So I realized that names are powerful, and the word Alexander is a twofold compound. Alex in the Greek means a defender, and then andros or ander is man. Yeah. So Alexander is an advocate or defender of man. Alexandros, which I thought was highly significant because people who know me to be just that, an advocate or defender of man. You took on the meaning of the name. You take on the meaning of the name. The meaning of a name becomes you, which is why it's extremely important that when you name someone something, that it's a name that aligns with who they are or who you wish them to align with. You know, today black people just call their kid names based off a sound, and it has no meaning. Yeah. You ask the average black person about the meaning of the name, they just call their child. And they'll tell you they don't know what it means. They just name it off a sound. Yeah, they made up something. They just made up something. That's crazy. Our ancestors attached deep meaning to names. Right. So Matidyahu, that name became him because Antiochus Epiphanes, surnamed Epimanes, the madman, also had a mighty Greek fighting force with him. Right. And when he approached Jerusalem, not only did he say that the Greek culture, religion, lifestyle, culture, and heritage is now to be practiced here. But if we catch any of you little Hebrew people practicing your Torah, reading your Torah, taking away extra skin off your bodily members, something that is a no-no in Greco-Roman culture, because in Greco-Roman culture, the human body is worshipped. Right. It's adored. Right. And to disfigure it on any level is desecration of such. They considered it mutilation. They considered it mutilation. The people of the city of Athens, which were like the intellectual elites of the Greeks, they frowned at circumcision. They thought it was barbaric. Right. That these melanated people In Africa, the Hebrews, the Egyptians, Ishmaelites, they all were defiling their body as a marker of allegiance to their God. Right. They used to laugh. They used to think we was crazy. Now, you find a lot of them doing that because of the fact that they've adopted our culture and our heritage. The average European Christian believes he has to be circumcised now. But his ancestors looked at it as something as ugly. Desecration of the body. Foreign to our culture. This is what Matityahu, or Mattathias, and his contemporaries had to fight against. Remember, Antiochus marched inside the Jerusalem temple and put an image of Zeus Olympus in the Holy of Holies.
Yes, sir.
That's comparable to coming into the Jerusalem temple, if it was standing today, and putting the picture or image of white Jesus in there.
Or Buddha.
Or Buddha. Israelites would tear your head off then, and Israelites now would tear your head completely off. As they say, to the white man.
To the white man.
You understand? So, the allegiance, the faith demonstrated by Mattathias was so strong, so powerful, because he knew if he went against the order of this general, Antiochus, that it not only was going to bring trouble to him specifically, but also to his children and everybody around him. Remember, because of his stature and his position, he was asked to be the first to come in and join in the desecration.
Right.
He was asked to join in because if the people see you do it, and they think to themselves that I'm not even half the man you are, so how I'm going to say no when you said yes? Then that means I got everybody, right? And he rose to the occasion and he said no. Nay. But as God is my witness, I am not defiling my culture and my heritage for you, O heathen. We doing this law. And with that, he took his sword out of his sheath and took the life of that individual that asked him to defile his way of life. That's serious.
And not only that, there was a, if I remember the history correctly, when they asked him to do that, there was a sellout
that went and did it.
That tried to go and eat the swine's flesh, or whatever it was that they were asking.
Right.
I think it was to eat the swine's flesh. And, you know, Uncle Tom, Israelite.
As we got them today.
Oh, but I'll do it. I don't care what he got to say.
That's right.
Because he figured the Greeks were there, you know, the Seleucid Empire was there, and Antiochus and his people were there.
That's right.
Well, Antiochus people, because Antiochus wasn't there at the time. He sent this general, and he brought forward and went to eat that meat, and Mattathias left him right there with the pork chop in his mouth.
Right in his mouth. And, you know, one thing I have to highlight about this story is that because of the actions of Mattathias and his son Yehuda Maccabee and the other sons, because he had, as you know, he had several sons that each rose up after one was put down. The show didn't stop. This is very important about Israelite or Hebraic culture. Right. The show don't stop when one man go down.
When one man go down, right.
Which is why we have to rise to a spiritual and intellectual state where we always realize that God is in control.
Right.
And men are operating as managers here, so to speak, or as presidents, right? But the owner and CEO is orchestrating everything.
Most sides.
We don't never get to the point where we follow a man to the point where we're not sure if God is working with us.
Right.
Mattathias realized that there was an immense pressure on him. He also realized that if he did this, a certain chain of events would occur that would push them to go into exile and they would have to fight, right?
Right.
So I'm asking the people now, who do you think were some of the individuals that may have inspired the kind of fight that Mattathias gave? For example, where did he get the strength to know that he can do this? To know that the Greeks outnumber them and they still can do this? Well, let me remind us of some of the recent history during that period. just 30 to 40 years, almost 50 years before this occurred, right? We have Hannibal. Hannibal of Tarsus. Hannibal, remember, for those of us that remember the history of Hannibal the Great, Hannibal defeated the earliest Greeks that came to take African land and culture up out of this world, right? What a lot of people may not realize is that Hannibal was what we would call, in today's language, a Phoenician. Hence why all three wars that Hannibal fought are known as the Punic Wars. Because the Greek way of saying Phoenicia is Punica, not Phoenicia. The Greeks called the land of Phoenicia Punica. And they referred to the wars that Hannibal fought with them as the Punic Wars. But Hannibal was a Phoenician. So I have a question. If Hannibal was a Phoenician, what language did Hannibal speak? Hannibal spoke Hebrew. And let's take it a step further. Not only did Hannibal speak Hebrew, but when Hannibal's descendants, after Hannibal ultimately lost to the Greeks, when his descendants came back to the Roman Senate and asked Rome for parts of their land to be restored to them because the Jews took some of their land, Rome said, nay, because the Jews were with your father in alliance with him when he fought against the Greeks and the Romans. A lot of people don't know that. The tribes, the northern tribes of Dan, Asher, Zebulun, these were tribal members of Hebraic faith and culture and lineage that actually fought with Hannibal. There were Hebrews that fought with Hannibal.
Right.
So anyone familiar with the tactics that Hannibal employed, because he was also extremely outnumbered, these are individuals that gave birth to terms like guerrilla warfare.
Right.
The guerrilla warfare employed by Mattathias, but in particular Judah Maccabee, was taught to them by their predecessors, the northern tribes that were in league and alliance with Hannibal the Great. Very important piece of history, because in the Afrocentric community, we love to talk about this individual called Hannibal. And everyone knows that he's a black man. Some even say he's an African. But very few take the time to really do the research and realize that the man was a Phoenician. Carthage in North Africa, modern-day Tunisia, or modern-day Libya, was a Phoenician vassal state. When they lost their land of Phoenicia due to the northern tribes occupying it, such as Dan, they had to create a vassal state on the horn of North Africa, the tip of North Africa, in Libya. And they called it Carthage.
Carthage.
But they were Phoenician by lineage and blood, which means they spoke Hebrew. Very, very important, because these are the individuals that laid the intellectual and military framework for the guerrilla warfare practiced by Judah Maccabee. Remember, we just spoke about King Saul being a great king in spite of not having a template for kingship. He's the first king. Judah Maccabee fought guerrilla warfare. He fought and won and triumphed even when numbers were against him. And he did it through the understanding of how to fight guerrilla warfare, which is strategy that entails great thinking, great planning, great strategies. So who led or who laid the template for that? Hannibal and other Israelites. Very important. Very, very important that we cannot forget that part of the history when we're talking about the Maccabees. Because it's always important to know the genesis of a thing, the origin of a thing.
Right.
The guerrilla warfare employed by Judah Maccabee did not begin with him and his father. There was a template for it earlier.
Right.
And some of our ancestors participated in that template, which makes it even more significant for us.
Right.
So what stands out to me about the story of Hanukkah, to wrap it up, is that as Judah Maccabee and his brothers and their followers begin to reclaim the city of Jerusalem and then venture out to reclaim other parts of the land of Israel, they're making sure that not only is Torah sheltered, but Torah is practiced.
That's right.
They're bringing spiritual rejuvenation, they're bringing spiritual revitalization, and they're bringing spiritual rededication. Now, when we talk about the surname given to Yehuda or Judah, they say in the book of the Apocrypha, and he was called the Maccabee, which is the hammer.
The hammer.
Right? But our oral tradition tells us something a little different. There's a couple of Psalms that have this phrase, who is like unto thee, O Yehovah? Or who is like unto thee, Yah? In Hebrew, it's Mi kamoka ba'alim Yehovah. Who is like unto thee, O Yehovah? Which is a rhetorical question. Nobody's like unto God, right?
That's right.
The war cry, according to our oral tradition, of Judah Maccabee and his followers and his brothers, every time they went to war, you know, when military soldiers go to war, for those who have actually been in the military, you know, there's a war cry that they shout as a term of endearment and inspiration to win the war. There's a series of statements that they say, sing, or shout out to inspire courage and bravery in the battlefield. Well, the oral tradition teaches us that Judah Maccabee and his brothers all shouted, Mi kamoka ba'alim Yehovah. Who is like unto thee, Yehovah?
Hey.
And they decimated armies.
Right.
And guess what? The initial letter of all those words is Maccabee. Mi kamoka ba'alim Yehovah. Maccabee. So the Greeks tell us he was called Maccabee because of how hard he hit the Greek forces. He was a hammer. Our oral tradition says it's actually the mnemonic for Mi kamoka ba'alim Yehovah. It was the war cry of Judah Maccabee.
Wow.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Brother Zion Lexx, for another great interview.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief.